Hello and welcome back to the True Crime Lounge on True Crime Saturday. Last week we talked about Charles Manson Part 1. Now we're going to be continuing on with our four-part series on Charles Manson. This is Part 2 where events start to lead up to the family's killings. If you want to catch up, you can go to Part 1 which talks about his backstory and everything. But if you are new here, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more true crime videos, true crime lounge videos. Comment someone you want me to talk about next or something you find interesting about Manson. Now let's grab our drink of choice and step into the true crime lounge. Alright. Now, let's talk about his first offense. By committing burglary of grocery stores, Manson obtained cash that enabled him to pay him to rent a room in a string of burglaries of other stores, including one from which he stole a bicycle. Ended when he got caught in the act. He was sent to Indianapolis Juvenile Center. He escaped after one day that led to his recapture and the placement in a boys' town. 4 days after his arrival there, he escaped with another boy. The pair committed 2 armed robberies on their way to the home of the other boy's uncle. Caught during the second of his 2 subsequent break-ins in grocery stores, Manson was sent at age 13 to Indiana's boys' school, where he will later claim he was brutalized sexually and otherwise. After many failed attempts, he escaped with 2 other boys in 1951. In Utah, the 3 were caught driving to California in cars they had stolen. They had burglarized several gas stations along the way for the federal crime of taking a stolen car across state line. Manson was sent to D.C.'s National Training School for Boys despite 4 years of schooling and having an IQ of 109, later tested at 129. He was illiterate. A caseworker deemed him aggressively antisocial. This will lead to his first imprisonment. In October 1951, on a psychiatrist's recommendation, Manson was transferred to Natural Bridge Honor Camp, a minimum security institution, less than a month before his scheduled February 1952 parole hearing. He took a razor and held it against another boy's throat while he sodomized him. He was transferred to a federal reformatory in Petersburg, Virginia, where he was considered dangerous. In September 1952, a number of series of disciplinary offenses resulted in his transfer to federal reformatory in Chillicothe, Ohio, a more secure institution. After a month of the transfer, he became almost a model resident. Good work habits and rise of educational level from a lower 4th to upper 7th grade when he won a May 1954 parole. After temporarily honoring a parole condition that he lived in with his aunt and uncle in West Virginia, Manson moved in with his mother at the same state. In January 1955, he married a hospital waitress named Rosalie Jean Willis, with whom, by his account, he found genuine, if short-lived marital happiness. He supported their marriage via small jobs and auto thefts. Around October, just 3 months after he and his pregnant wife arrived in Los Angeles in a car that he had stolen in Ohio, Manson was charged with a federal crime for taking a vehicle across state lines. After psychiatric evaluation, he was given 5 years probation. His subsequent failure to appear in Los Angeles hearing on an identical charge was filed in Florida, resulting in May 1956 arrest in Indiana. His probation was revoked. He was sentenced to 3 years imprisonment in Terminal Island, San Pedro, California. While Manson was in prison, Rosalie gave birth to their son, Charles Manson Jr. During the first year at Terminal Island, Manson received visits from Rosalie and his mother, where he was now who were now living together in Los Angeles. In March 1957, when the visits from his wife ceased, his mother informed him Rosalie was living with another man. Less than 2 weeks before his scheduled parole hearing, Manson tried to escape by stealing a car. He was subsequently given 5 years probation, and his probation was denied. Now, his second imprisonment, Manson received 5 years parole in September 1958, the same year in which Rosalie received a decree of divorce. By November, he was pimping a 16-year-old girl and received additional support from a girl with wealthy parents. In September 1959, he pled guilty to a charge of attempting to cash a forged U.S. Treasury check. He received 10-year suspended sentence and probation after a young woman with an arrest record for prostitution made a Tier 4 plea before the court that she and Manson were deeply in love and would marry if Charles was freed. Before the year's end, the woman did in fact marry Manson, possibly so testimony against him would not be required for later. The woman's name was Leona. As a prostitute, she had use of the name Candy Stevens after Manson took her and another woman from California to New Mexico. For purposes of prostitution, he was held and questioned in violation of the Mann Act. Though he was released, he was evidently suspected, rightly, that the investigation had not ended. When he disappeared in violation of the probation, a bench warrant was issued in April 1960. Indictment in violation of the Mann Act followed. Arrested in Laredo, Texas in June, when one of the women he was arrested for prostitution, Manson returned to Los Angeles for violation of his parole on the check cashing charge. He was ordered to serve a 10-year sentence. In 1961, after he spent unsuccessfully appealing the revocation of the probation, Manson was transferred from another Los Angeles jail to the United States Pen at McNeil Island. Although the Mann Act charge had been dropped, the attempt to cash a treasury check was still a federal offense. His September 1961 annual review noted a tremendous drive to call attention to himself, an observation echoed in September 1964. In 1963, Leona was granted a divorce in the pursuit in which she alleged that she and Manson had a son, Charles Luther. In June 1966, Manson was sent for the second time in his life to Terminal Island in preparation for early release. By March 21st, 1967, his release date, he had spent more than half of his 32 years in prison and other institutions, telling authorities that prison had him become his home, and he requested unsuccessfully that he permitted to stay. In fact, in a 1981 television interview with Tom Snyder. And we're back. With that, to take a quick break for a second, we're going to go on and talk about the Manson family. On his release day, Manson requested that he was granted permission to move to San Francisco, where he with the help of a prison acquaintance. He moved into an apartment in Berkeley. In prison, bank robber Alvin Kirpus had taught him to play steel guitar. Now he was living mostly by panhandling, he soon got to know Mary Bruner, a 23-year-old graduate of the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Bruner was working as an assistant librarian at UC Berkeley, and Manson moved in with her. According to a second-hand account, he overcame her resistance to bringing other women to live with them. Before long, they were sharing Bruner's residence with 18 other women. Wow. Manson established himself as a guru in San Fran's High-Ashbury, which during 1967's Summer of Love was emerging as a signature hippie local, expounding a philosophy that included some of Scientology he had studied in prison. He soon had his first group of young followers, most of them female. Upon staff evaluation of Manson when he entered prison in July 1961 at the U.S. Penitentiary in McNeil Island, Washington, what was I? Yes, Manson entered Scientology as his religion. That makes so much sense, but yet he was quoting revelations about why they needed guns. Anyway, before the summer was out, Manson and his 8 or 9 enthusiasts piled into an old school bus where they had rerouted in his hippie style with colored rugs and pillows in place of many seats, which had been removed. They had roamed as far as north as Washington State, and then later through Los Angeles, Mexico, and the Southwest, returning to Los Angeles area. They lived in Topanga Canyon, Malibu, and Venus, and western parts of the city. In an alternative account, Manson acquired family members during some of the months of travels that were undertaken in part in a Volkswagen van. He apparently was accompanied in Bruner. I gotta take a quick break, y'all. I will get back with y'all. Okay, now we're going to be talking about the involvement with Wilson, Mercer, et al. The events that would accumulate into murders were set in motion in late spring 1968. By some accounts, Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys picked up 2 hitchhiking Manson women and brought them to his Pacific Palisades house for a few hours. Returning home in the early hours of the following morning of the night, recording sessions, Wilson was greeted in the driveway of his residence by Manson, who emerged from the house. Uncomfortable, Wilson asked the stranger whether he intended to hurt him. Assuring him he had no such intents, Manson began kissing Wilson's feet. Inside the house, Wilson discovered 12 strangers, mostly women. Over the next few months, as the number of them doubled, the family members who made themselves part of Wilson's Sunset Boulevard household cost approximately $100,000. This included a large medical bill for treatment of their gonorrhea and $20,000 for their accidental destruction of an uninsured car, which they borrowed. Wilson would sing and talk with the girls whose women were treated as servants to both of them. Wilson paid for studio time and written songs written and performed by Manson. He introduced Manson as an acquaintance with his roles in the entertainment business. This included Craig Jacobson, Tony Marcher, and Rudy Aldebelly, the last of whom owned a house he would rent from the actress Sharon Tate and her husband, director Roman Polanski. Jacobson, who was impressed by the whole Charlie Manson package of his artist lifestyle philosopher, who also paid Manson to record material. In Manson's own words, the account of the first he met Wilson at a friend's house in San Francisco's house, where Manson had gone to obtain marijuana. The Beach Boys supposedly gave Manson his Sunset Boulevard address and invited him to stop by whenever he would be in Los Angeles. I wonder if they're looking back now thinking, what was I thinking? I'm curious on how that might be playing out right now. Let's see. We're going to talk about Spawn Ranch. Manson established a base for the family at Spawn Ranch, not far from Topanga Canyon, in 1968 after Wilson's manager told the family to move out of the Wilson's home. The family relocated to the ranch. The ranch had been a television and movie set from Western Productions. However, by the late 1960s, the buildings had deteriorated and the ranch was earning money primarily by selling horseback rides. Family members did helpful work around the grounds. Also, Manson ordered the family's women, including Lynette Squeaky Prom, to occasionally have sex with the nearly blind 8-year-old man, George Spahn. The woman also acted as a CNI guide for Spahn. In exchange, Spahn allowed Manson and his group to live at the ranch for free. Squeaky acquired her nickname because she often squeaked when Spahn pinched her thigh. Charles Watson soon joined the group at Spahn Ranch. Watson's a small-town Texan who had quit college and moved to California and met Manson at Dennis Wilson's house. Watson gave Wilson a ride while Wilson was hitchhiking as his cars had been wrecked. Spahn nicknamed Watson Tex because of his pronounced Texan drawl. Helter Skelter. Alright, let's talk about Helter Skelter now. In the first days of November 1968, Manson established the family's alternative headquarters in Death Valley's environs, where he occupied two unused or little-used ranches, Myers and Barker's. The former to which the group had initially headed was owned by the grandmother of a new woman in the group. The latter was owned by an elderly local woman whom Manson presented himself and a male family members as musicians in need of a place congenial of their work. When the woman agreed to let them stay there if they fixed up things, Manson honored her with one of the Beach Boys' gold records with several which was given by Dennis Wilson. While in Spawn Ranch, no later than December, Manson and Watson visited a Topanga Canyon acquaintance who played them the Beatles' White Album, then recently released. Despite having a 29-year-old in prison, despite having been 29 years old and in prison when the Beatles first came to America in 1964, Manson was obsessed with the group. At McNeil, he had told his fellow inmates, including Alvin Caprice, he could surpass the group in fame and to the family, which he technically did. Just not in the way he wanted to. He spoke of his group with soul and part of the whole and infinite. For some time, Manson had been saying the racial tension between blacks and whites was growing and that the blacks would soon rise up in rebellion against cease. He emphasized MLK Jr.'s assassination, which had led them taking over in April 4th, 1968, on a bitterly cold New Year's Eve at Myers Ranch. To the family members gathered outside a large fire. Listen to Manson explain the social turmoil he had also been predicted by Beatles. The White Album song, he declared, told it all and in code. The fact that he maintained, or would soon maintain, the album directed at the family itself, an elect group, would be instructed to preserve the worthy of the impending disaster. In early January 1969, the family escaped the desert's cold and positioned itself and monitored LA's supposed tension in the canary yellow home in Canoga Park, not so far from Spawn Ranch, because this locale would allow a group of submerged beneath the outside world. Manson called it the Yellow Submarine, another Beatles reference. Their family prepared for the impending apocalypse, which around the campfire Manson had turned helter-skelter around the time. By February, Manson was complete. The family would create an album whose songs of subtitle of the Beatles would trigger predicted chaos. Ghastly murders of the whites by blacks would be met with retaliation, and the split between racist and non-racist groups would yield white self-immolation. Blacks triumph as it were merely perceived as their portion. A secret beneath Death Valley. At Canoga Park, while family members worked as on vehicles prepared there for a desert escape, there was also work for a world-changing album when they were told that Terry Melcher was to come to the house to hear the material. The woman prepared a meal and cleaned the place, but Melcher never arrived. Manson's encounter with Tate. On March 23, 1969, Manson entered uninvited upon the 1050 Cielo Drive, which he had known to be Melcher's residence. This was Rudy Altobelli's property, where Melcher was no longer a tenant. As of that February, the tenants were Sharon Tate and Roman Polanski. Manson was met by Shirako Hardeman, a photographer and Tate's friend. Hardeman was there to photograph Tate in advance of her departure for Rome the next day. Having seen Manson through a window as Manson approached the main house, Hardeman had gone onto the front porch and asked what he wanted. While Manson told Hardeman he was looking for someone whose name Hardeman did not recognize, he informed him that the place was the Polanski residence now, and advised him to try back alley, by which meant the path to the guest home beyond the main house. Concerned over the stranger's property, Hardeman was down by the front wall to confront Manson. Appearing behind him in the house, Tate asked him who was calling, and Hardeman said the man was looking for someone. And Tate maintained their positions while Manson, without a word, went back to the guest house and returned 2 minutes later and left. That evening, Manson returned to the property again and went to the guest house, presuming to enter the enclosed porch, and he spoke with Rudy Altobelli, who just coming out of the shower. Although Manson asked for Melcher, Altobelli felt that Manson had come looking for him. The consistent with prosecutor Vincent Volgolsky later discovered that Manson had apparently been to the place on earlier occasions after Melcher's departure from it. Speaking through the inner screen door, Altobelli told Manson that Melcher had moved to Malibu. He lied and did not know Melcher's new address. In response to a question of Manson, Altobelli said he himself was in the entertainment industry. Having met Manson the previous year at Dennis Wilson's house, he was sure Manson already knew. At Wilson's, Altabelli had complimented Mason lukewarmly of his musical recordings he had been playing. While Altabelli informed Manson that he was going out of the country the next day, Manson said that he would like to speak with him upon his return. Altabelli lied and said that he would be gone for more than a year. In response to a direct question of Altabelli, Manson explained that he had been directed to the guest house in the main house. Altabelli expressed that he wished Manson did not disturb the tenants. Manson left as Altabelli flew with Tate to Rome the next day. Tate asked him whether that creepy-looking guy had gone back to the guest house the day before. That is it for part 2 of our Charles Manson series. Coming up soon, we'll be getting into the actual murders that have happened and the aftermath of everything. That's it till next time. I can't wait to see you guys again.